And I think
Interesting.
before I move on to the code stuff, so I know you have all sorts of opinions there.
Yeah.
Another big way I use AI is like for the podcast, right? So I have an AI co-host, which has been kind of sidelined for a little bit, just because it's I think
She's in hibernate mode.
yeah, right. The well the format of podcasts has kind of changed a little bit from like having an intro to really more just jumping in. And
Hmm.
so initially I had an intro and then we kind of jumped in. Now I'm kind of doing that intro and then we just jump in. I don't know if it's better or worse. Let us know if you have an
Hmm.
opinion, but it's taken the, getting into the podcast down from like a minute to like a few seconds.
Yeah.
And then, but I'll use it for editing. So my editor that I use has AI built into it all over. It'll help cut segments. It'll help cut clips. It'll help cut kind of, I don't want to say everything we talk about makes sense in the context, but sometimes I'll edit the podcast for clarity
Hmm.
and use AI to help disentangle things, or if we make a tangent. But again, I'm using it to identify that tangent or that it thinks it's a tangent. And then I'm using my brain and my creative influence to say, yeah, that doesn't really make sense. Or actually, you know, 80% of that can go, but these are the two key pieces we need to edit. And like, as I've talked about before, I don't really edit too much. When I'm doing like the clips or the shorts, you have to get it down to a few seconds. So it's kind of hard to like edit 30 minutes into a few seconds. But I find it saves me a ton of time. I
Hmm.
use it for a lot of the visuals, like all our thumbnails are AI if it's not obvious. Like, and I don't care that it's obvious. It takes me a few minutes to generate something that's visually appealing and kind of fun. That's
Hmm.
the goal. Like the goal isn't to have the world's greatest thumbnail. The goal is to have something that is fun and visually appealing and gives you an idea of what we're talking about. I don't really believe in like AI generated art. Like I think it's interesting from like a creative perspective, but like it all kind of looks the same after a while.
Unless you style it after some existing artist.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
for the podcast audio improvements, I'll use AI for video improvements if I need to. Most of the time, the audio and video are okay or fine, but I'll sometimes run them through a process. And then post processing, I've talked a little bit about my product Seeks. We should probably do a deep dive on that at some point. But I built a
That would
product
be fun.
using AI to do a little bit of post production stuff that I wasn't finding anybody in the market was really servicing the way that I liked. And then also all of the kind of metadata around podcasting is really bad with AI. And so chapter generation, summaries,
Hmm.
episode titles, I don't really use, I'll usually, my process for titles is really interesting. So titles really matter, especially on YouTube. So I use it to
Makes
kind of,
sense.
I'll ask it, give me some title recommendations. It'll give me some title recommendations. I almost never go with them, but sometimes I'll like use it as like I'll usually have something in my mind as we're talking or at the end or as I'm editing. I'm kind of like, oh yeah, this would be, kind of a key point or a title. And then I'll use that as kind of a basis. Sometimes I'll use part of it or I don't think I've ever actually used a whole title for AI.
You take pieces of different titles and you break
Yeah,
them
and then
together.
when it
Yeah.
comes to title stuff, like again with the deep research, it's like the title, especially on YouTube, is like part of the key search. So the title is not necessarily reflective of the episode; it's reflective of the audience you want to bring to the episode. So that involves research on what's popular right now. What are the words? Like, how are people, like the way that I might say something or like technical jargon that might be appropriate, people might not be using. So, like, trying to figure out, how do you market it appropriately?
Hmm.
It doesn't fix marketing. Like, if you have a brand, you still need a marketer, but it can help disentangle and deconstruct some of those tasks.